What if who you think you are isn't who you truly are? Carl Jung didn't believe people were blank slates. He believed we are born with predisposed ways of seeing the world, interpreting it, and reacting to it. But from the moment we enter society, family, school, culture, we're nudged into boxes, pushed toward ways of thinking that may feel alien to our nature. You were taught to behave, to conform, to suppress. But what if your most authentic self has been buried under layers of expectations? Jung's theory of personality goes deeper than surface-level traits. It's not about being introverted or extroverted. It's not even about being emotional or logical. It's about understanding the functions, the deep-rooted processes that govern your thoughts, choices, and emotions. This isn't self-help fluff. It's a psychological roadmap. There are 7 dominant psychological tendencies, and each one carries both strengths and blind spots. Some of us lead with logic, others with empathy. Yay! Some crave the concrete, others chase the abstract, and yet most of us are strangers to our own minds, unaware of what truly governs our behavior. Understanding your core type isn't about fitting into a new label, it's about unlearning the wrong ones. Because the moment you discover who you are beneath the conditioning, everything changes. 1. The rational thinker. There are individuals whose inner compass always points toward clarity. Not emotional clarity or spiritual alignment, but something colder, more precise. Logic. For the rational thinker, the world must make sense. Events must align with cause and effect. Ideas must withstand scrutiny. Feelings, though not dismissed entirely, must be interpreted through a rational lens before they're trusted. These are not people who act impulsively or decide based on gut instincts. Instead, they analyze, they verify, they dissect. What drives this type is a deep need to understand how things work, whether it's solving mechanical problems, building systems, or diagnosing failures in abstract structures like law or philosophy. They feel most alive when there is a question to be answered and a structure to be uncovered. Their sense of identity is often built around their intellect, and they may find validation in their ability to stay objective when others are overwhelmed by emotion or noise. But this clarity comes with its own challenges. Because they are so attuned to systems and order, rational thinkers often struggle when faced with ambiguity, especially emotional ambiguity. When confronted with situations that cannot be resolved through logic alone, like grief, love, or interpersonal tension, they may withdraw, not because they don't care, but because their toolkit was never designed for those terrains. Their inner world is often complex, filled with mental maps and conceptual blueprints. To others, they may appear distant, even cold, but beneath the surface is usually a silent desire to connect, on their terms, in their language. And their language is precision. What makes them admirable is their ability to remain composed when everything is falling apart. Where others panic, they plan. Where emotions flare, they recenter. But in this strength lies a subtle vulnerability, the danger of becoming disconnected from human nuance. By placing intellect above emotion, they risk misinterpreting situations that don't follow logical rules. The growth path for the rational thinker lies in exploring the terrain they usually avoid, to sit with discomfort without solving it, to listen without analyzing, to feel without needing explanation. These experiences don't weaken their clarity, they deepen it. Because when logic is informed by empathy, it doesn't lose its edge, it becomes wisdom. 2. The empathetic feeler. While some people navigate life with equations and evidence, others use something far less tangible, but no less powerful: emotion. The empathetic feeler moves through the world by attuning to meaning, connection, and internal resonance. Their decisions aren't based on calculated outcomes, but on what feels ethically aligned, emotionally true, and spiritually consistent. To understand this type is to recognize that logic, to them, is often a secondary language. Yeah, their native tongue is value, not abstract or imposed values, but personal convictions born from deep emotional reflection. They don't ask, "What's the smartest thing to do?" Instead, they ask, "What is right for me and others?" This sense of moral orientation is not rooted in societal approval, but in their inner compass, which is often finely calibrated. What makes the empathetic feeler unique is their ability to sense what is unspoken. They often pick up on the emotional temperature of a room before a word is said. They are aware of others' needs, tensions, and emotional gaps, not through analysis, but through resonance. This sensitivity allows them to be powerful healers, diplomats, and connectors. People feel seen around them, not because they are being studied, but because they are being felt. However, this very strength can become a double-edged sword. Because they prioritize harmony and emotional attunement, they often suppress their own needs. They may overextend themselves to maintain peace, avoid conflict even at personal cost, or carry emotional burdens that are not theirs to hold. Their compassion can be so expansive that they forget to draw boundaries, leading to burnout or hidden resentment. Another challenge lies in their aversion to cold logic. If something feels wrong emotionally, they may reject it outright, even when the facts point otherwise. This can make them resistant to feedback that doesn't come wrapped in kindness or attunement. And in environments that reward detachment or objectivity, they may feel alien or misunderstood. Yet, when balanced, the empathetic feeler brings something rare: heart-led intelligence, their depth of understanding. G goes beyond data. It reaches into the essence of what it means to be human. They remind us that not everything needs to be justified. Some truths are felt, not proven. Their path of growth lies in developing emotional independence, learning to say no without guilt, learning to face conflict without internal collapse, and perhaps most importantly, learning to honor their inner truth even when it differs from others. Because when they embrace both their compassion and their courage, they stop just keeping the peace and start becoming the peace. 3. The practical sensor. Some minds live in the present so fully that the future barely enters their awareness. The practical sensor is grounded in what is real, immediate, and observable. Unlike visionaries or philosophers who dwell in abstraction, sensors trust what they can touch, see, and experience. Their reality is factual, not hypothetical. They value structure, order, and practical outcomes over theories and speculation. For them, meaning comes through action, not contemplation. They aren't interested in what might be. They are focused on what is. They remember details others miss. They complete tasks methodically. They prefer processes that have been proven over those that are still experimental. And when asked to describe the world, they reference concrete things. What happened, who said what, where it took place. This approach makes them incredibly dependable. In crisis, they don't theorize, they act. When teams need execution rather than brainstorming, they lead through consistency and precision. They are the anchors in chaotic environments, offering structure when others spiral into abstraction. But their realism has a cost. Because they rely heavily on external data and sensory input, they may dismiss anything they cannot immediately verify. Visionary ideas may seem foolish. Emotional nuances may go unnoticed. They can become so fixated on what's familiar that they resist change, even when change is needed. In relationships, this grounding can be both stabilizing and frustrating. Their loved ones may admire their consistency, but wish for more emotional engagement or imaginative depth. And in careers that require big-picture innovation or emotional sensitivity, they may feel out of place, valued for their reliability, but not always for their insight. The practical sensor's growth comes from developing flexibility, learning to embrace uncertainty, to trust in possibilities not yet seen, to acknowledge that not all truths are visible, and not all value lies in what is already known. By stretching into abstract or intuitive thinking, they don't lose their grounding. They become more expansive. In a world obsessed with innovation, the sensor reminds us of the power of presence. They live where life actually happens, not in distant dreams or imagined futures, but in the richness of the now. And when they pair this present moment awareness with curiosity for what lies beyond it, they become not just efficient, but wise. For 4, the visionary intuitive. Some people live not in the present moment, but in what lies just beyond it. These individuals don't simply observe reality, they sense patterns that haven't yet formed, connections others miss, and futures still in seed form. The visionary intuitive is not content with what is. They are drawn to what could be. To them, daily life often feels too small. Repetition and routine can feel like confinement. Their minds naturally stretch towards the abstract, the metaphorical, and the symbolic. While others rely on what can be seen and proven, the intuitive relies on insight, those quiet flashes of understanding that seem to arrive from nowhere. But in truth, their subconscious is constantly processing vast layers of experience and possibility. The visionary isn't interested in details for their own sake. They're more likely to skip steps if they can see where the process is heading. They don't want to be slowed down by logistics. They want to get to the meaning. Their conversations can seem scattered, but there is often a deeper thread running through their thoughts, waiting to be uncovered. This gift for abstraction is both inspiring and difficult. On one hand, they are creative problem solvers, innovators, and thinkers ahead of their time. They are drawn to complexity and challenge. On the other hand, they can become so consumed by ideas that they forget to follow through. 1,000 beginnings and few completions. This is often the shadow of the intuitive. Relationships can be strained when others don't understand their detachment from the immediate world. They may appear distracted or disinterested, not because they don't care, but because they are tuned to a different frequency. Small talk bores them. Deep philosophical or symbolic conversations awaken them. Their growth lies in grounding. Ideas, no matter how brilliant, are useless if they cannot be lived. By developing a connection to the tangible, the world, through sensation, discipline, or real-time engagement, they can give form to their insights. In doing so, their visions move from the realm of imagination into reality. The visionary intuitive teaches us the value of foresight, that what we sense matters even if it cannot yet be measured. But when they learn to marry their dreams with discipline, they become not just dreamers, but architects of the future. 5. The harmonizer. Some people walk into a room and instinctively know how others feel, not because they ask, but because they absorb. They sense tension before it surfaces. They adapt their tone without being told. Their emotional radar is so refined that even subtle shifts in someone's expression register like a change in temperature. This is the world of the harmonizer, those who lead with extroverted feeling. Unlike internal feelers, the harmonizer is oriented outward. Their primary concern is emotional equilibrium in the environment. They want people to get along, to feel respected, to feel understood, and they're willing to shape themselves in order to maintain that harmony. To others, they can seem empathetic, tactful, diplomatic, sometimes even charismatic. They are gifted at knowing what to say and when to say it. They understand emotional etiquette, and they can mediate conflict with ease. These abilities often make them natural leaders in community settings or social organizations. People trust them, not because they're always right, but because they make others feel safe. But this attunement to the outside world comes at a cost. The harmonizer often struggles to access their own emotional truth. So much of their energy is focused outward that they forget to turn inward. They may ignore their discomfort to preserve peace. They might say yes when they mean no, not out of fear, but because they genuinely want others to be okay. Our identity can slowly erode as they try to become what others need. And when suppressed emotions build too long, they don't disappear. They leak out. Sometimes in passive resistance, sometimes in sudden outbursts that shock those who see them as always composed. Another risk is over-reliance on approval. If their sense of self becomes too entangled with others' perceptions, rejection can feel like collapse. Praise becomes addictive, disapproval destabilizing. Yet at their best, harmonizers are emotional stabilizers in a world that often forgets feeling. They can make spaces more humane, more gentle, more interconnected. Their challenge is to realize that true harmony includes them too. They must learn to protect their emotional boundaries, to speak uncomfortable truths, and to stop trying to make everyone else okay at their own expense. Their journey isn't about rejecting their gift for connection. It's about remembering that connection without authenticity is only a performance. And when they embrace their own emotional truth, they bring not just peace, but integrity. 6. The lone idealist. Some individuals carry their values like sacred fire, quiet, persistent, untouchable. Their emotional lives may not be visible to others, but they run deep. They are not reactive, not loud, not interested in surface drama. They don't cry for attention, but they feel everything. They are the lone idealists, those who lead with introverted feeling. To the outside world, they might seem reserved, even aloof. But inside, a vast moral landscape exists. These individuals are governed not by external rules, but by internal convictions. Right and wrong are not inherited from culture or family. They are discovered in solitude, refined through reflection, and carried like a compass. Once they know what they believe, they cannot betray it, not for approval, not for gain. Unlike harmonizers, they do not bend to maintain peace. They are not interested in blending in. They value authenticity over harmony, even if it makes them unpopular. Their emotional loyalty is not to people's opinions, but to the truth as they see it. They do not show their feelings easily, but they love with intensity. Their commitments are few but deep. Their strength is integrity. They often create art, philosophy, or activism rooted in personal truth. They are the conscience of movements, the poets who put inner worlds into words, the ones who don't need the spotlight to feel real. But this integrity can become isolation, because their feelings are so personal they often lack the language to share them. They may assume that others won't understand, or worse, that they don't deserve to. They risk becoming invisible, even to those who love them. They may reject compromise when it's not betrayal. They may refuse support because they don't want to dilute their authenticity. They can be so consumed by protecting their values that they shut out connection entirely. Yet their healing lies in vulnerability, not the performative kind, but the courage to share their interiority without expecting total understanding. When they risk being seen, not for validation, but for communion, they begin to soften the walls around them. The lone idealist doesn't need to change who they are. They need to trust that being true doesn't always mean being alone. And when they do open, their presence becomes transformative, not because they demand attention, but because they radiate something even rarer, unshakable truth. 7. Unlocking your repressed potential. There's a part of you rarely confront, yet it shapes more of your life than you realize. Jung called it the shadow, the side of your personality you suppress, deny, or avoid. It holds your weaknesses, yes, but also your untapped strengths. Most people identify with their dominant traits. A logical person trusts thought over feeling. A dreamer relies on intuition, ignoring practical concerns. A helper avoids anger. These preferences feel natural, but they create blind spots. What you don't use becomes what you can't face. The shadow isn't obvious. It shows up in subtle reactions: defensiveness, irritation, envy, shame. You might lash out unexpectedly or shut down when challenged. These aren't just moods, they're signals. The shadow is trying to speak, but instead of listening, we push it down. Society teaches us to be consistent, agreeable, successful. There's little room for contradiction, so we silence the parts of ourselves that don't fit the image. Over time, this inner split becomes normal. You think, that's just who I am. But it isn't the full picture. What you reject doesn't disappear. It becomes unconscious. And the unconscious always finds expression through projection, sabotage, or repeated patterns. The more you run, the more it controls you from behind the scenes. Jung believed growth doesn't come from doubling down on your strengths. It comes from integrating what you avoid. A thinker becomes more complete when they learn to feel. A sensor expands by embracing uncertainty. An extrovert gains depth through solitude. These aren't weaknesses, they are neglected potentials. You don't need to change your type, but you do need to understand the parts of you that you've pushed away. The shadow is not the enemy. It's the part of you that holds your wholeness. Facing it is hard, but avoiding it costs more. Most people live as fragments, pieces of personality adopted for survival, some conscious, others buried deep in the unconscious. But Carl Jung believed that becoming whole isn't about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming who you've always been beneath the masks. These 7 psychological types aren't definitions. They are maps. Each offers a glimpse into how your mind is wired to work and which parts you've been taught to ignore. If you always lead with logic, maybe it's time to feel. If you live in ideas, maybe it's time to return to your senses. The truth is, you are not just a thinker or a feeler, not just a dreamer or a realist. You are a complex system of strengths, shadows, and silent drives. The journey of individuation, the path Jung spoke of, is not a destination. It's a decision to stop hiding from yourself, to stop acting as if the parts you dislike don't exist, to meet your shadow, your strengths, your vulnerabilities, and finally become whole. Because in the end, the most dangerous lie is not the one society tells you, it's the one you tell yourself, that you already know who you are.